Well, good evening, folks. We'd like to get started here this evening. I just want to start out by saying thank you so much for coming out. We're certainly glad that you could be with us. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Tim Rice. I'm the senior pastor here at Christian Fellowship Church. I want to start out just by thanking Mayor Matt Brenk, Chief of Police Tim Eggebraaten, and School Superintendent Doug Froke for coming out and joining us. Let's give them a hand here tonight. I also want to thank our sponsors for tonight's event, Eiley Tree Service, Ramsey Flooring, and John Seberg Plumbing and Heating. Since there's a couple of Seberg Plumbing and Heatings, I figured I better throw John's name out there just so you know who that was. The goal of tonight's get-together for me is it's really quite simple. My heart is to see how we can work together. That's kind of the deal. I think what happens oftentimes in communities, what happens because of the busyness of our life is we get busy in one particular area or in our job or in our area of life, and we end up in this little bubble inside of a community, and we don't know what's going on in the community around us. We don't know how the city government functions. We don't know what goes on. So my goal for us tonight is simply to be able to come together and connect. You know, I want to connect with the community that we live in and the community that we work in. So it's our goal to hear from these community leaders tonight in their particular area of expertise. What are the areas that they function in and they work in? As you can see in our program tonight, we have a spot for some questions. If you'd like to fill out some questions, our format is going to be that we're going to start with interviewing each one of these fellows tonight and talking about their particular area. And after about an hour of that, we're going to take a 10-minute intermission. Before we go to intermission, I'd like to gather up any questions that you might have. And then we'll do just a 10-minute intermission, and we'll come back and we'll put all three of them up here at the hot seat at one time. And we'll ask as many questions as we can get to. Maybe we'll get 2 or 3 questions. Maybe we'll get 6 or 8 questions. But we want to be able to have a dialogue, have a conversation about really what's going on in this community and how we can be a part and how we can participate in it. So also on the back side of that question, you'll see a spot for your name and your address and your email, a way to contact you. This is twofold. First of all, we're not going to start sending you a million spam things. We're not going to sell your name to anybody's list, okay? But what we want to do is we want to get information from you. It's our goal to do 4 of these forums in the next 12 months. We want to do 4 of these, 1 a quarter. And so what are some things that you may want to hear about as a community, but also what can we do to make this a better event? So we want to give you that opportunity to communicate with you on that level as well. I know that this is a community event and we're in a church, so we're just going to ask for God's blessing here, and then that's how we want to start our service off. Father God, we just thank you for your goodness to us, God. You've placed us all in this community together, and it's our desire to work together in the community that we live together in. So Lord, we just pray for your blessing, your hand of blessing to be on this service tonight, this event. And we thank you for your goodness towards us. In Jesus' name, amen. Now I've asked Tim if he would share with us, start out, and he's going to share a few songs with us first. Most of you know that Tim is quite a talented performer. There you go, all at once. Obviously the spotlight was for you all along. I'll sit down.
Tip your bartenders and waitresses. Yeah, would you? Doug, you got the piano solo. Solo, we can't hear it. Solo. This is very cool. Thank you guys very much. So I thought about some songs to sing and what we would do, and at first I felt, if this would have been probably 15 years ago as a younger police officer and my guitar, I would have said, I don't know that this is appropriate, but the older I get and the wiser I get, the more I realize that this has a purpose too, and this has a purpose, and this has a purpose, and we all have a purpose. So the song I want to start out with is one one of my favorite Lee Greenwood tunes. If tomorrow all the things were gone, I'd worked for all my life, and I had to start again, just my children and my wife. I thank my lucky stars to be living here today, 'cause the flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the man who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. From the lakes of Minnesota to the hills of Tennessee, across the plains of Texas, from sea to shining sea, from Detroit Lakes down to Houston and New York to LA. Well, there's pride in every American heart, and it's time we stand and say that I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the man who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the man who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. No flash photography, please. God bless the USA. God bless the USA. Thank you very much. I think we'll leave it at one for now and then crank it up later maybe. Thank you.
Well, we can do this either way, but I'd say just grab a seat here. We'll get you a microphone. And just going to ask you a couple questions first of all, and then I'm going to let you take off after that. How's that?
All right.
So, this is all kind of new for us. He probably hasn't done this before. Maybe you have. I don't know. But I haven't. So, here we go.
All right, let's do this. Name that tune.
Just really wanted to talk. One of the things I wanted to ask you is what are some of the issues that you're facing in the police department? Now, in case you don't know, many of you don't know, Tim is retiring after this year. He's right before Thanksgiving. You said he's going to be will be his last day here on the force, and he's got there's a new guy coming in that's already ready to go. He's already accepted his position. So I think you told me the other day that you thought you were going to do this for a year or two, and it turned into a 23-year stint or something like that.
In Detroit Lakes here, yeah. We moved here I started July 1st of 1992, and it was a Wednesday night. And I'd never been to Detroit Lakes other than my folks had a cabin on Grace Lake, south of Bemidji. So my wife and I lived in Moorhead, and we would travel by here via Highway 34, but we never stopped in Detroit Lakes, and we didn't know anything about the community, really. I'd never came here for the 4th of July. Both Denise and I, my wife and I, were Moorhead State graduates. Go Dragons! And Well, we never came here for anything, and when I was going through my skills training and everything, I when I got done and I was eligible to be a police officer, I took a map of Minnesota and circled the towns that were like 30,000 and bigger. You know, I thought I wanted to be in a bigger, not Minneapolis big, but something bigger, like a Moorhead or Mankato or something. Sure. And so I got hired here, and Walt Tollefson, the chief at the time, said, there's a pretty good chance you'll retire here. And I literally just kind of looked at him and said, you bet, you know, and okay, yeah, just hire me and I'll be gone in a year. And I didn't tell him that, but, and literally it was probably about 2 months into it that we really started we bought a house right away, because we just felt the community was absolutely amazing, and fell in love with it, and we're home now. This is totally home.
Very cool. Very cool. So, we've curious about the things that are going on in the police department, staffing concerns, things you have going on, things that officers are facing. Obviously, with the violence that we see in our community, even the stuff that, not so much in our community, but certainly what's going on in the state, a couple things, and the police violence against police. How is the morale of the police department? How are the guys doing? The guys and the gals, are they dealing with that? And I'm a very optimistic person, okay. And so probably my role at the police department is to spread sunshine, and I'm probably too much that far over. But I was talking with a bar manager here a couple of weeks ago at the Holiday Inn, and he asked me that same question, and I cut out media from my personal life. I don't watch the news. I don't read the newspapers. Sorry. I mean, it's some of the... Hence the no photography.
Yeah.
Now we know where that came from. All right.
Let me rephrase that. Let me rephrase that. I'm careful about the news I watch. So, and like social media, my Facebook and my Twitter streams are easy now, because it's I've cut that out. I know it's there. So I know that every traffic stop. I just made a traffic stop out here on Highland Drive before I got here. The guy was going fast. So every traffic stop that's in my brain. But what I don't do, and what I encourage my younger officers to do, or even the older ones, is don't sit there and watch YouTube videos for 3 hours of the traffic stop that goes south, and they end up shooting them, or the cop gets shot or whatever. And when I was talking to this bar manager, I said, imagine if your bartenders watched the movie Roadhouse for 4 hours every day, Patrick Swayze, and if they watched that movie, and if they went into their bartending gig, thinking that every guy with a cowboy boot's probably got a knife embedded in his boot, and they're going to treat people differently. They're going to act differently. So my message to my officers, and what I'm living myself, is to treat everybody with respect, and regardless of age or whatever. So every traffic stop we make, we're cautious, but we're not paranoid. I'm very cautious. I've been here 24 and a half years, and broad daylight, I've had business people in a suit get out of their car and start walking back to my car on a traffic stop. And I'll reach out the window and say, please have a seat in your car. And they keep walking back. One guy in particular was, a who's who around the community. This was many years ago. And he kept walking back to my car. I said, sir, have a seat in your car. He kept walking back to my car. I know he heard me. So I said, sir, get your ass back in your car now. And then he turned around, and he was all upset. And Walt Tollefson got a phone call because the officer was rude. But, because this guy's dad was a small-town cop in the 50s, and no way would he be treated that way. And I said, sir, I don't know who you are. Right. I have no idea who you are. No clue. I don't care if he's wearing a suit or if he's a man, woman, child, whatever. The language was there. I asked him politely, and it just... So that's kind of the message I try to give my guys. And certainly when they're seeing it and they're observing it. I had one of my younger officers buy, we all wear vests, these bullet-resistant vests, but he bought a tactical one that's super heavy. It's made out of ceramic, and it's like it would stop a rifle round, And he asked me if it was okay that he uses his uniform allowance for it, and I said, of course, go ahead. And but it just hurts to, this guy, he wants to get home to his wife and family, and I appreciate that. And so yeah, it does weigh on our minds. I can tell you that in the 24 and a half years I've been here, 5 years as chief and about 13 years as a sergeant, we get very few complaints. The complaints we get are like rudeness complaints, but in the 5 years I've been chief, I've never handled an officer like roughing up somebody or use of force thing. And actually I'm filling out the forms now for 2015. We had 0 complaints. No complaints. People complain, and
That's right.
But that's just a testament to the men and women we have working here. They're aggressive and they're active. We handle about 13,000 calls for service every year. And to kind of put that in perspective, Crookston Police Department, same size department, similar sized community, they're about 5,000 calls for service. And so we're over double. East Grand Forks, same, they have 23 officers to our 15. And again, same size community with Grand Forks right there with them too. And they're at about 5,000 calls for service a year. And so we're a busy community, and the officers are doing it professionally, and it makes me fiercely proud of these men and women that do it with grace and with humility, and but yet the beauty of living in a community like this is most people are shutting off the news at 10:30 and they're going to bed. Mm-hmm. But there is an element here. It's real. It's live. There's people that abuse drugs and abuse their wives and abuse their kids, and it's here. And so my staff that deals with that on a daily basis, my hat goes off to them in this career that we balance that whole thing about doing the job, but then learning to dial it down too at certain points. And when you're on a traffic stop in Detroit Lakes, this 4th of July, I was behind Zorba's in People's Park dealing with some kids, and I had this young 17-year-old kid sticking his cell phone in my face, recording me. And it actually worked to my advantage because he pushed my button, and I've got a big easy button. My big easy button is somebody challenging my authority, especially a young person. And I had a young person in my backseat of my car that was getting a ticket for minor consuming. And this young individual, they had my car surrounded in People's Park about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. They were just kind of standing around. Everybody's chirping. They're all getting angry. I'm keeping my cool. They hit the big easy button, whatever they said. And I got out of my car, and I've got a large forehead, and I've got a vein right here that when I get angry or upset, this vein goes, and people can see it, and so they got my vein going. And I got out of my car, and I was just ready. I'm sure the mayor would have gotten a phone call about the angry chief of police, yelling at these kids. Just ready to start laying into these kids about, you have no clue what you're talking about. And they were like interrogating me. And this one young man was fidgeting around with his phone, and I knew he was going to start recording, and that's what disarmed me. And I stopped, and I said, "Let me know when you're ready." And he goes, "Okay, I'm ready." And so I just got back in my car, and I thought, okay, it's not worth it. So I took the young man that I had in my car. I took him away from the situation. So we're dealing with it. And Detroit Lakes is a beautiful community, but examples like that really drive home for me, like my brothers and sisters that are working like in South Central LA or Northeast Minneapolis, where that's a daily thing, and they're getting stuff thrown at them and insults and spit on. And I've been spit on a couple of times. I can tell you it's not fun, but your emotions kick in, and it's an emotional situation, and it's so you try your best to maintain that cool and the calm, and that's what I'm saying is most of the time we do, and it's a professional thing.
So how do we as citizens then, how do we work alongside you? How do we what do we do? What can we do to help the law enforcement in this community? I think we're all kind of that same ilk. You know, we love this town. We don't
Right.
want to see that stuff go down. So how do we stand alongside the officers?
I think just the whole idea of looking out for each other, because right now it's 20 after 7, so right now there are probably 3 uniformed officers patrolling all the way from the west side of Long Lake to south side of Timber Creek, all the way up here and beyond up here, and so it's a big turf. So we need to watch out for our neighbors and keep an eye out for things and it's a balancing act for law enforcement to try to fit in with their community. That's where my music, when I was first became chief of police, or when I was trying to become chief of police, that question was asked of me is, do you think it'd be a conflict of interest being the chief of police and doing music too? Because I've been doing music for about 14 years out and about, and my honest answer was, if it is a conflict, let me know and I'll step down from the chief's job, because, and I don't know, maybe I don't think it has been a conflict. I think the opposite has happened, because for me personally, that's a huge release for me, and it allows me to communicate to people that wouldn't come up and talk to me
Sure.
dressed like this. And then just the release I get, it's a complete drug for me. I absolutely love it. And so finding that balance was difficult for me personally. And so that's my role now, is to mentor my younger officers and to have them find their balance, whatever their release is, as long as it's not at the bottom of a bottle of Jack Daniels. It's find a positive release. My wife and boys and I are active in our church. We're active in the community, and that gives us, that feeling of community. So, but not everybody. Everybody's going to have their, some guys go
Sure.
hunting and fishing and
Sure.
whatever. But so that's kind of the balancing act. So as the community, keep us on our toes. I mean, keep us to task. We don't mind being told that, hey, this was wrong. Whatever's happening in our community, or in what I saw on the news the other night was wrong. And we don't mind that. And I think I can speak as a whole for our team anyway. What I don't like is, I would never talk to Superintendent Froke and say, there's always people in our community that know more than everybody. So I would never go to Superintendent Froke and say, boy, you're messing up. You should be doing this with the schools, or why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? I welcome constructive criticism. I don't like when people come in to a situation that they don't know anything about, and they're trying to tell us that we messed up, and a lot of the times we can't explain to them what the truth is, what exactly happened, because the data
you
practices.
could be a pastor.
I could be, yes, exactly.
You could be a pastor. That kind of fits.
Yes. Can
Matter
I get
of
an
fact,
amen?
I'm thinking about all 3 of us here. We may want.
Yeah. No, and there's very similarities, or a lot of similarities, and that's why I don't jump on that bandwagon of the poor police, because it truly does happen everywhere. I mean, the football coaches, it happens a lot of different places. One of the differences is that the police officers in some jurisdictions are being attacked because of it. I mean, they're taking it to a whole different level. But we can all handle scrutiny, I think, to a certain level, and that's not a bad thing. So as a community, that's no problem with that. Keep an eye on your neighbors. Keep an eye on what's going on in your community, and you look around. Another thing I tell my young officers, if you're feeling down on our community, if you've watched too much social media and you think this generation is horrible, go to a high school basketball game, or a play, or a volleyball game, or where there's 50, 60, 100 young people, and they are rock stars. I mean, they are moving and grooving and busy, and it's Tuesday night in the park. We do a lot of music and stuff Tuesday nights in the park. And I look out there, I play once a year, and I look out and there's a couple hundred people, and that's reality.
Yeah.
I mean, this is reality. And even in other parts of the communities, where like the South Central LAs or the really rough neighborhoods, I still would argue that the vast majority of the people that live in those communities are proud of their communities and they want what's right. And it's just the loud, violent, vocal ones that are getting the attention and making it difficult on everybody else. So I guess that's one thing, maybe a community, we can continue doing things like this and be more vocal about, not to us, the police, but to your friends and neighbors, and say, when you hear somebody at a cocktail party whining about the speeding ticket that they got, instead of feeding that fire, maybe just say, I don't know, or just
you should have been slower.
Yeah, you got pulled over for a reason.
Exactly.
Some ownership would be nice.
Well, all right. Hey, let's just give Tim a hand here. And 20 minutes goes by awful quick. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Doug Froke, if Superintendent Froke, we could have you come on up. I want to remind you, folks, to fill out those questions if you have questions. Again, we may not have time for a whole bunch of them, but I'm actually going to get this out of the way so that you're not looking through it and I'm not looking through it, and we'll use it again if we need to. So we're going to kind of take a look at the same thing. Mr. Froke, I was looking at, questions that I could ask you and things to get this started, and kind of interested in what's new in the school district. One of the things that crossed my mind was, what are some of the safety precautions that are in place for kids in school, and what are some of the things that you're seeing? Again, how do we as a community work together with the school board and work together with the school district? And I mean, it's all of our hearts to see kids get a safe education and a great place. So take off from there a little bit, if you would.
Well, it's a very interesting question in that safety can cover a full range of things.
Sure.
And from just the physical aspects of walking into a building to the relational aspects that kids experience from the day to day. Just in their encounters with one another on a day-to-day basis. And so when you talk about those kinds of things, that I don't think there's anybody in this room that probably didn't go to a school where the doors were open. Anybody could walk in at any time of the day or night, back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, whatever. I don't mean to bring up dates, but just given for example purposes, is that it was just our community school, no matter where you came from. And oh, by the way, there was probably everybody had a key to their local school too, so they could get into the gym at night, that kind of thing. And the mentality of the community school, and that's not wrong. Times are different. Yeah. And so from a physical standpoint, we wanted to go back, because it is a community school, have an expectation that, we're going to take care of our kids at least as best we can from a physical standpoint, by providing some order where it comes to accessing our buildings. Why? Because I think you want that for our kids.
Absolutely.
And so as you take a look at, locked doors during the day, I tell you what, there aren't many places anymore that you don't have to gain access to beforehand. Our precious gifts are our moms and dads. And if you ever, me having, both parents in nursing homes a few years back, I mean, that stuff is, you have to be cleared to get into those places, and why wouldn't we want the same thing for our kids? And so it's a work in progress. It's a change in dynamic from what we're used to in our mindset, but understanding it, we're not doing it to kids and families. We're doing it for kids and families. And then the second piece would be about just this whole relational thing that we want to make sure that kids are when they come into our buildings are safe. And when you talk about safety, it isn't just the physical nature; it's the emotional safety as well that obviously they're facing on a day-to-day basis. So obviously that you're probably wondering where maybe with this conversation bullying came up. Has been a big deal with kids over the last few years. You know what? We do a really, really good job with that. And conversely, years ago, we didn't. Yeah. And that's the reality of the matter. You know what? Administratively, we maybe talked about it, or a teacher talked to a kid. You got to tough it out. Now we don't do that anymore. You know what I mean? Everything is investigated and vetted when it comes to those hard relationships that kids might have because they're confined into a box for 8 hours a day.
Sure.
And so needless to say that as you asked the question, what can we do to support? One would be an overall understanding, again, from the physical standpoint of why we do things the way we do from a physical standpoint, the locked doors, the glass, all those kinds of things, and the calling down of the student and the checkout of the student. But also when we investigate instances of student-to-student relationships or teacher-to-student, that we do now go through a full range of an investigation. Okay. And that's a little different, than what things used to be. We have to make sure all of those alleged instances or real instances of bullying are vetted, investigated. Yeah, and that means some of our counselors are questioning moms and dads and kids and those kinds of things. And so that's what we do. Asking what you can do, understand. Okay. It's different. It's different than what it used to be.
It's hard for us to imagine that. We're all kind of stuck in our own little world and our own realities from where we came from. We come from small schools and small towns, and that's just a hard thing to... I just heard recently about a kid getting kicked out for a jackknife, and my first thought was, good night. I've had a jackknife in my pocket since I was, and I probably actually have one right there. I got one right there. Yeah. But, times are different, and we get that. So how are things going with the, a couple of things then that, how's enrollment in the school district? How are we doing there?
Pretty good. We're staying on track. Maybe all of you have seen in materials or meetings and those kinds of things that you've seen in the last 10 years, that upward trend. We're on that trend line, showing a nice growth. We had been told back in 2011 that we would experience moderate growth as a school district, largely because of the fact that the growth of the Fargo-Moorhead area. Okay. And that by virtue of the Highway 10 corridor, all of us on the Highway 10 corridor would experience enrollment growth. And that's come to fruition and is very real. As we talk about today, I think by the time we shook things out, opening day to opening day, we're up 96 kids from last year at this time. Wow. So 90 to me is not moderate. That's a little heavier than moderate, a little bit more. And so that number puts us at an opening day. That number had us over 3,000 kids for the first time in almost 20 years. Wow. So the growth is continuing. It's steady for us. And then in April, the school board commissioned a study that was conducted by the former state demographer. Her name was Hazel Reinhardt. She's now gone into the private business of doing these studies for school districts and told us that we could continue to expect that out to 2026, where that growth would continue at a 10% clip a year. So pretty healthy. That's good news. That's good.
That's good. And how are you keeping up then with staffing? Are you able to maintain staffing with the growth of the student population?
And that's one of the things that maybe our crowd would understand too is that as you take a look at it used to be that teaching was a very honorable profession, and it still is. But by the same token, you had a lot of teachers that were applying for jobs. I mean, in Detroit Lakes, it's just our applicant pool for jobs over the years has been terrifically healthy. We've always had just strong numbers in our application pools for jobs that we held, particularly in the teaching realm. In the last 2 years, that's changed markedly. And I've been giving this statistic in some of the places where I've been speaking, Rotary and Kiwanis and those kinds of service organizations, where it was about 5 years ago where we listed out the elementary positions, and we would have 400 applications. Okay, our application pool for the bunch of elementary positions this year was 60. 60. Wow. Now that tells you what's happened there. We take a look at all of the various teacher prep colleges in the area. Morris, Minnesota, last spring. Now Morris, a pretty heavy duty teacher education preparation school, last spring had 14 teacher education grads. 14. Whoa. Now that encompasses all different curricular areas too. 14, that's it. Wow. So we've got a problem brewing on the horizon. We have yet to fill one particular position where teachers are concerned, and we've tried different ways to advertise that. And this is a very, very difficult position, sure. But because the programs aren't out there either. But we were able to fill all of those things. Other than that, and of course the legislature has allowed us to do some different things too, understanding what the predicament is. It's not just Detroit Lakes, folks. It's all over the state. I can't imagine where a Herman Norcross, what they must go through to get a teacher, or a Wheaton, and so it's changed a lot in that regard. Okay, why is that? I think our kids that are graduating from high school now don't view that as an occupation that they want to take on. That's front and center. They just don't. Might be from maybe their experience and seeing that some days it is a challenge to sit in that classroom, and then two, the financial side of it, where kids come out of college with an incredibly high debt load, and they have a car, they have a cell phone, they have to rent, and so that first year teacher salary isn't probably as inviting as maybe what it used to be, or as accepting, maybe that's the way to put it, as it used to be. Okay. So anyway, and then I would add too, it isn't just teachers too. We're part of a workforce in Detroit Lakes and in Becker County that all of our workforces, our businesses are looking for workers. And the school's no different. We're all working for the same. We're all looking for the same person. Okay. So I think we are 9 paraprofessionals or teacher age short right now. And so what that means is you're moving people to the high need areas. Okay. And so that's what we do. But everybody's in the same boat. So it's changed a little bit. That's a great question. Okay.
A couple difficult questions for you.
Oh, no. I thought those were the difficult ones.
I was told by Tim that we're working our way up, so there you go. Yeah. So 2 things that I want to ask you about. One is just the are you finding it more? I don't even know how to really ask it. Kids coming into the school with more needs, making it more difficult to educate. Are you dealing with more of that here in Little Becker County?
Sure.
Okay.
Our demographics are changing too. We love our kids, without a doubt, and we love our families. Our demographics have changed, particularly in the last 3 years, where our segment of children in poverty have increased, and also the children in need of special education services has increased. When we take a look at the state average of children, of school districts educating children with special needs, I think that's running in the neighborhood of 14% now, where we're running 22%. 22% of our population is receiving special education services.
So state average is 14?
About 14.
And we're running at 22?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. And then the poverty right now, the number of children in our school district receiving free or reduced price lunches, and that's the measuring stick for the level of poverty in our schools. is running at 48%. And then the state average is running about 35.
Okay.
So just a little bit more, but you take a look at the difference there when we try to measure ourselves. Is you take that 13% times our 3,000 kids, and you see what a difference that makes.
And
from
does the legislature? I mean, you're funded for that? We're able to cover that.
There are many different funding formulas within for what we receive. There are many different funding formulas or funding vehicles that address poverty.
Okay.
and special ed. Special ed, you have to have an understanding that we as a local community have a share in educating those kids, but also because it's a federal law,
Sure.
that the federal government also has a role in it, and as does the state of Minnesota. So there's 3 different funding streams there that assist with the services to those kids, which is good.
Okay, here's the big one. You probably guessed this one, but in the course of the last couple of legislative sessions, the school has attempted school bond referendum and that's been turned down. So two parts to this. Number one is, what does that say to you as a school board superintendent, that the community has turned that down? And then I want to finish that off by giving you 5 minutes to just let us know why that's important.
Basically, what in response to your first question, I don't know any other way to say it or answer it, but to just say it was turned down because they didn't like the plan.
Okay.
Period. And that's there.
Are there new plans floating around out there that we're putting together?
What we're doing initially now is that, who knows, it started today, and maybe some of you in the room here received a call from an agency called Morris Leatherman, and they're going to be calling folks in the community to survey you, and we wanted to get that out as soon as we could before all the stuff with the political season comes.
Okay.
And when you get that call from a private agency or something like that, you're going to go, oh golly, another doggone political organization. I'm done. Sorry. So we wanted to get it out before the heat of the presidential election and all of the legislature, all that kind of thing. So if you would get a call, don't hang up. Okay, stay with us. We want your feedback on this, and the survey is in depth. It asks about 60 questions. So don't stay with us. Be patient and answer the question again if you get called. And so that will be a driver in telling us basically what the community would support.
Okay.
We have to find a way to find out. Okay, if these things you didn't like this plan and it was pretty overwhelming, then what would you like? Because the other thing is, do I have any statistical data that tells me this? I don't, but I can't believe that people don't see that we have an issue in our buildings.
Well, then I'm just, again, here's your opportunity. Share with us the needs. That's part of why we're here, is we want to say, okay, how do we work together? What are the needs that you see in the building? Give me a sales pitch on.
No, okay. Well, we're dangerously we're in the midst of right now that class sizes will continue to escalate. That's and I know that's a big thing for parents. We've always taken great pride in making sure that we had tolerable levels where student to teacher ratios are concerned across the district. That's just not going to happen anymore. Okay, I mean we're starting to creep up out past that level of comfort and what our level of from an ethical moral standpoint as educators are concerned. So that's number one. Two, I think you can take a drive around, and I think you can see the conditions. Some of our buildings are tired. They just are. And so us having to take a look at fixing some of these buildings, because in some cases some of the estimates are beyond what we're able to take care of from our annual allocation of deferred maintenance or upkeep on an annual basis. They're larger than that. And then with that, the changing face of education. And it's different. It's different now. Our school rooms are changing, and with it goes the need to physically change them. Okay. And so that's it. Yeah, that's one of the big things I think, that we're starting to really figure out here is we've got to talk more about what our classrooms look like. It isn't the sage on the stage anymore that stood up and had 5 rows with 5 desks in them, and the teacher up front, sending out information from the textbook. It's not that way anymore. And Tim flashed the phone out. I'm going to flash the phone out because kids have all the information they need right here. So it's changed in the realm of how do we get kids to use the information that's here, as opposed to somebody standing up and lecturing them for 48 minutes and then they go on to the next class and get lectured. So you come in and you see teams of kids working together. Classrooms are very, the kids are cackling in classrooms. It's really interesting. Where it used to be quiet because I'm up front and I'm teaching. Now it's more integrated in teamwork, and that also means how the rooms are. The need for the room is different. For example, we're piloting a furniture this year, furniture on wheels in a classroom. Okay, picture that classroom in the morning. They're all lined up, and in 20 seconds. They're wheeled off into different 4 segments of kids working together on a project. It's just totally different than what you and I experienced, and that's a cause for concern. I would also, let's say one more thing. The expectations from us as a school are different now. Our workforce needs our kids, and so we're having to train them. To go out either if they're college ready or career ready, and in both instances that means our buildings have to change to meet that. Again, we talked about the workforce needs in our community. Those things are weighing in and certainly are a factor in some of the needs that we have facility wise.
Very good. Thank you, Doug. Appreciate it very much. Let's give him a hand here. I got a police officer watching over me. I got to give you your pen back. Once again, don't be afraid to fill out your forms, and Mayor Matt Brenk is going to join us next.
Thank you, Tim.
You're sure welcome. Glad you could be with us tonight. Really appreciate you coming out.
I left my cell phone in the car.
I can't even loan you mine. Yeah, look there. Everybody's jumping with them. Well, a couple of years ago, I was at a building downtown, looking at a building downtown. You were showing a building to some friends, and I remember saying to Matt, boy, all of a sudden we're seeing business growth in town, and there's businesses coming to what's going on? And he said, well, you finally got the right mayor. So maybe that's.
Well, fortunately, I'm unopposed, so I'm not slighting another candidate here. But no, we have a lot of good things going on in Detroit Lakes.
Yeah, well, give us kind of a rundown of what's going on with the population, and we're seeing a lot of construction. We're seeing a bunch of stuff, and you said maybe you just want to do your state of the city. Well, give us a shot. What's going on?
Sure. Community? Well, our population now is about 9,000 people in Detroit Lakes, and part of that is growth of the city, and part of it has been a result of some annexations that we've done. We're now all the way around the west side of Long Lake, so that's another city lake that we've added to the mix. And so part of it's annexation, and part of it's just the growth we're seeing in Detroit Lakes. People want to live here. We have a lot of nice facilities here. We have a great park and rec system. We've got a community center that would be the envy of cities way larger than us. We now have Detroit Mountain, which is a city-owned facility, and So people want to live here, and that's great because that's good for businesses to locate here and for businesses to expand. And but it's a challenge to keep up and to keep property taxes down because growth is expensive.
Okay. So what would you say are some of the greatest challenges then that we face as a city? Obviously, we're seeing a lot of housing stuff going on, some new apartments. What are some other challenges that we face as a city?
We know a couple of years ago we did a housing study, and the result of that study was that we had practically a zero vacancy rate in our rental units. And so over the past couple of years, we've had some new apartments go up. Some of these new developments you see, the McKinley Plaza project downtown, things like that are creating some additional housing units, so we're catching up a little bit in that department. We've seen lots of housing starts. I think in 2015, we had about 48 new homes go up.
Okay.
I know it's probably slowed down a little bit in 2016, but, so we're starting to catch up with the housing. Doug alluded to this. One of the biggest challenges, I hear this all the time from business owners, is a lack of employees or the inability to get employees that'll, be able to pass a drug test and will show up for work on day 2. So
Okay.
we've got that as an issue, and it's a big problem. And it's not just in Detroit Lakes. It's, I think, statewide, and I think it's also a nationwide issue. So.
Okay. How do we as a community work together with city government? I mean, you're obviously kind of the boss there, and
I don't even get to vote.
but how do we work together with city government? How do we work together to make things even better?
It's kind of funny because if it's a routine agenda in the city council, there's hardly anybody that comes to our meetings. Now, if something's getting built in somebody's backyard or something like that, lots of people will come to the meeting. So I would say first and foremost, come to a city council meeting once in a while to see what's going on. There's a lot of things that don't make it into the paper or on the radio that happen at the city council meetings. We also, most of our business comes to the council via a committee system. We've got a park board, we've got, a finance committee, we've got all these different committees that recommend action items to the council on the regular agenda. So attend those meetings. If you've got an interest in our park and rec system, go to the park board meetings, express, some new ideas or let us know how we're doing. So there's a number of ways that people can get involved through that. And I guess the biggest thing is be decent people and be good citizens. And I don't know what we do with this generation where we've got this problem with this workforce, but that we've got to solve it somehow. And I don't know how we do it.
Okay. You said a little bit earlier that you and I were talking, and you're kind of coming up to a time in your career here where you a couple more runs at this, and may be able to step out at 30 years of public service. First of all, I just want to say thank you for public service. That is,
Thank you.
we just really appreciate men and women serving, especially in that capacity. So thank you so much for that. But how do we get people, and you just said a little bit earlier, we need to get younger people involved. Give us a speech on that. Activate us.
I'm glad you brought that up. I look at our city council, we are getting older, and I can see in a couple years where there's going to be some members that get off the council, and I can speak from firsthand experience. It takes a little while to get up to speed. There's a lot of things happening in Detroit Lakes. It's a very diverse and complex community, and it takes a while to get up to speed. So I would love to see younger people get on the council because there's going to be at some point a changing of the guard. And so that would be an excellent way. If you know somebody that's interested in being on the council, encourage them to run at some point. So.
Okay. Just try and get people involved.
Exactly.
All right. Well, hey, we got about 5 minutes here. So I just want you to take a couple minutes here and just give us an encouraging big picture of the community and what you see and why is this Detroit Lakes? Why is it a place that we should we should stay and we should make home. And
Because we got a lot of great stuff here.
my wife just told me the other day, she doesn't like when I use the word stuff. There's just too many things in that. Give us a good picture. Tell us.
We are very fortunate with the natural resources we have, where we're located, you know, the amenities we have. I mentioned the community center in Detroit Mountain, but we've got golf courses, we've got lakes, we've got so many things to be thankful for here. And that's why Detroit Lakes thrives. And I'll give you one more pitch. We have great people here, because when it came to building the community center or doing Detroit Mountain, 90% of that money was raised through donations, you know, stewardship. So we've got great people leading the charge on these things, and we've got great people who are willing to donate and make sure Detroit Lakes has these nice things. And it's great to be mayor here.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what, folks, we're going to take about a 10-minute break. We're just going to start a counter. And then what I'd like you to do is, if you have questions, get them to the end of the row. And then we're going to bring these guys back in 10 minutes and give you the opportunity to grill them a little bit more and see if you can ask them some tougher questions than I did. But it's about how do we work together in this community. So let's just take a break. Bathrooms upstairs, there's bathrooms downstairs. You might even grab a glass of juice or a cookie while you're down there. But let's take a 10-minute break here.
Spacious skies, or amber waves of grain, or purple mountains, majesty above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed His grace on thee, and crowned thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful for patriot dreams that sees beyond the years, thine alabaster cities, undimmed by human tears. America, America, God shed His grace on thee, and crowned thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea, from sea to shining sea.
All right, gentlemen, if I could have you each have a seat up here. As you can see, I got a mitt full of questions, so okay. And then you can just each grab a microphone and a chair there. And as odd as it seems to have me standing in front of you, I know that from a preaching perspective, if I stand here, actually you can see everybody and everybody can see you. So I'm going to stand here and just ask a question. Doug, you want to go ahead and grab a microphone as well? Some of these are going to be to you individually, and some of them will be for you as a group. You got an awful lot of questions coming your way, Tim. I'm telling you, if we got the time, man. I'm going to start with one that is a collective. It's for all three of you.
10-4, I'm on the way. The bat phone just answered.
I want to start with one question for all three of you. Are there any kind of committees or vision committees or long-term committees that are looking together at where we're going to be in 10 years? I mean, are you guys collectively doing anything together, or city or school? Go ahead.
On January 12th, the city council is going to conduct a long-range planning session, and we've got a professional coming in who's going to help guide us through that process, and we're going to be setting short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals for the city, and we've never had a professional come in and sort of help us with this process. We've had long-range planning sessions in the past, but we're hoping for a little better, more organized goal-setting process where we can attain some of these goals, with more success. So, and those are open to the public. If people want to come, they're certainly welcome to come. We haven't established. I don't know if we're going to have it at City Hall or where we're going to have it, but January 12th is the date. And
Okay.
it'll be probably be pretty much an all-day long deal.
Okay. Guys,
I think Matt too has kind of shepherded a group where to address the workforce issue, where there were 3 different committees that were set up to start working on how we solve that issue, and one of them was on education, one of them was on temporary housing or housing, and the other committee was called Attract. In other words, we get young people to come to our community. How do we keep them here? Okay. And so those committees have been working, and I don't know what the ETA is on plans and those kinds of things, but they are a work in progress too. Right.
okay. And those are all open to the public then?
Yes.
And
absolutely.
you advertise those in the paper regularly, so they're out there? How do people know when they happen?
We try to make sure the press is aware,
Okay.
of anything of that nature, so that we get participation. So.
Okay. And do you guys have anything long-term in the police department?
We do we work obviously with the city, but we also, as different levels of law enforcement. So I'm a member of the Minnesota Chiefs of Police Association. So as an association of chiefs of police, we look for that kind of thing too. Where are we going? We're, the same struggles that Superintendent Froke is having with finding teachers. We're having the same issues with officers, and so we do have associations like that. There's officers associations, and so it's a constant evaluation. What are we doing well? What do we need to work on? Where can we go to see future trends and everything else? So
Okay. This one is for you, Tim. There's a nationwide prayer effort called Adopt a Cop. It's been launched. If there were churches or Christians in the Detroit Lakes area that were up for participating in something like that, would the police department, I know you're going to be stepping out, but do you think the police department would be open to that, and how might we approach that?
That's an interesting question, because each of our 15 sworn officers, everybody comes from different backgrounds. We've had some experiences in the past with a chaplain, may have tried to come in or something like that. I think the concept is really good, and I think that would be just depending on how it's delivered, because it can sometimes scare people away too if it's too kind of in your face type thing, and
too churchy sometimes.
right.
Can I say that?
Exactly. Yeah. No, but that's a good point. Because it's when somebody drops off goodies or ice cream or something for us, it's really awesome, and we appreciate that, and it makes us feel good, and we appreciate that. So I think so. If a church or a congregation or the religious community as a whole said, "Hey, we're doing an Adopt a Cop," it would make us feel good. But then if it got to be like, "Hey, I want to ride around with you and tell you this kind of stuff,"
Sure.
But I think it's a great idea.
Is there any opportunity for a citizen to do a ride-along with the police in town, or is that a...
Not with our office. I'm not sure what the sheriff's office does. We used to allow it, but we don't anymore. Unless they're like in school for law enforcement, they're going to be a police officer.
Sure.
And then, or if like, sometimes if the media would go around with us for a while, they have to kind of go through me first. But
Okay.
we used to do it a lot more often. My dad rode with me a few times when I was a younger officer, and we realized that it's a dangerous situation.
Right.
So.
Okay. Here's one for all three of you. And maybe we could just kind of go right down the line. Could you please talk a little bit about the impact of alcohol use in the community? And this person says, as a city, we know it's a revenue stream, but what are the negative effects on students, the negative effects in the community? That's a big question. I get it. We could spend all night just on that. But how are you seeing directly the effects of alcohol in the community?
Well, let me start.
If you would like, go ahead.
Okay. We've just annexed a site north of Detroit Lakes. It's about 17 acres, and Becker County is going to build a new jail there. And at our last council meeting, Commissioner Nelson got up and spoke a little bit along with Jack Ingstead, the county administrator. And, the need for more jail space keeps going up and up and up. And a lot of this is a result of drug and alcohol problems. So I don't know if I can speak to it specifically from the city side of it. Chief Eggebraaten could probably speak to it a little more, and Doug as well. But I think it's part of the problem we have with people that can't or don't want to work, and so we do have some of that problem here in Detroit Lakes.
Okay.
I would agree with that. I mean, there's certainly an issue. I look at WeFest when it comes into town. There's 50,000 people. Of the 50,000 people, we can figure that 75% or 80% of them are consuming alcohol. And there's, in my opinion, very few issues that arise out of it from a law enforcement perspective. So there's the good, the bad, and the ugly with it. The social aspect of it is fine. I mean, in my opinion, it's but we certainly, the jails wouldn't be needed if it wasn't for drug and alcohol abuse and what people are doing as a result of that in those conditions. But like you said too, it is a revenue source, and where do you go with that?
Superintendent Froke?
Certainly one of the issues that we face comes in the form of children, and what we're dealing with where maybe descendants of folks who are having issues with drugs or alcohol. One would be fetal alcohol syndrome, and as those children are born and they're identified as FAS babies, our services begin immediately. And when I'm talking about immediately, when we see that as they're born, we start our services with them. So they run as those kids then are identified with that disability, then their spectrum of services from the school district runs from birth to age 21. Okay, so it's very, and there is a presence of that. The second thing would be, as Matt and Tim talked about, was the level of incarceration. There are a number of parents, and we had a report from the Roosevelt Elementary principal in April, and then we took that report to the joint city, county, chamber, school meeting that are held quarterly. We get together and we talk about what each other's doing, and we showed the governing boards that data coming out of Roosevelt, the number of kids in Roosevelt by grade level that we knew of that had a parent incarcerated, and the numbers were surprising. You would think it'd be a couple, but no, there were more than just a couple in every grade known to be incarcerated or have a chemical dependency issue, known And that's just what, like I said, what we knew.
Now, can I ask you a question regarding that? Are we talking? You're talking about kids in Roosevelt. Did you just pick Roosevelt as a school to do as a sampling, or is there a particular area in the community that is more difficult for us, more of a challenge, causes more law enforcement issues, causes more school district issues? Is it just, or was it just a sampling?
It was just a sampling. It was just a study that our elementary principal, Trish Mariotti, did for us. It's a little difficult as you get into the middle school and high school, just because the teachers see those kids on an hourly basis and they rotate out. If you remember those days as a middle schooler and high schooler, okay, the elementary is a little bit more concentrated because they're with a teacher every day, and so the teacher becomes more aware. All day, every day, the teacher becomes more aware of what that child's dealing with and their home life and those kinds of things. So she just did that just to kind of see what was happening in her school.
Okay. What are some, and this is again for you, Superintendent Froke, what are some specific behaviors that you see in kids that again, a lot of us here come from the faith community. So what are some things that we as a faith community can be praying about to stand in agreement with you guys on? I mean, what are some specific behaviors that really concern you? And you can't name little Johnny who threw a, I mean, it's just, are there some things that are going on generally in the school?
Well, that's kind of hard when you talk about child behavior for reasons of there are so many factors that go into why Johnny is doing what he's doing or Susie's doing what she's doing, and it can be their body chemistry maybe might be in a little bit of a different place and may need some regulation. It could be what's happening at home. It could be what's not happening at home. Okay. And so as you talk about that, I think the larger issue is, we need to talk about when we offer what's called early childhood family education classes for our families, and our participation is very small, and the story can be repeated 367 times across the state of Minnesota, where school districts offer those classes on parenting, and very small. We don't hit very many at all in that program. I think that's a real issue. Is okay. What's the word I want to say here? Husbands and wives, boyfriends and girlfriends are becoming parents at a point in time maybe where they're not ready to be parents, and they don't know how to be parents. And that's by sitting down with them and reading at night, overall play at night, and that's hard when priorities are elsewhere.
I think part of what our questioner is asking is there a bent? Do you find kids that are you dealing more with rebellion? Are you dealing more with poverty? Are we dealing more with, and again, I know there's a kind of a full range there, but is there something we could say, this is part of how we're going to participate, is we're going to pray for this area in our community that just seems to be a real need?
Yeah, I struggle with that question because it's so broad that to put a finger on it would be is difficult for me, because like I said, it covers a wide spectrum of is this what disability does this student have, and why does he or she have it?
Sure.
And so a large part of the time you're dealing with what they call ODD, oppositional defiant disorder. You could take a look at just overall activity with the kid that may not be able to sit still. All of those are body chemistry type issues that obviously come from the mom and dad.
Okay.
Sorry if I'm not answering
well, you know what?
that very well.
I'm just trying to, and we'll take you off the hook for a little bit. So, Chief, what is the best piece of advice that you would give to a new chief of police coming in following you? What's the takeaway? What would you give him after serving 23 years on the force, 24 years?
I already have. After the city council meeting was it last Tuesday, when
Did you tell him I drive a red Impala?
I did. Leave him alone. No. My wife and I took Steve Todd, who's going to be the next chief. We took him and his wife out. And Steve's smart enough, but my advice to him is to get to know the people, and don't try to do this job or any job for that matter by yourself. You don't have to be the go-to person to know it all, to have all the answers, and it's okay. And he's a humble enough man to realize that he's going to have very few answers. But he's just, my role, we're going to have about a week overlap, and my role is going to be to introduce him to Marcy Hutchinson, for example, who has been with the city in the finance area for, I think she had an abacus when she started. She's been there a long, long time, and she is amazing. And when I took over from Chief Keena, and when Chief Keena did a good job of mentoring me and helping me out with different things, it's still, you reach out to the people that are in there. And tomorrow and Friday we're having a conference in DL here with regional chiefs of police, and so Lieutenant Todd is going to be there with us, and so I'm going to introduce him to other chiefs in the region to use as networks, and he'll be fine with that, because it's a beautiful community, and he's already invested in it. He's learning about the community. He's doing everything.
Okay, one more for Mayor Brenk. Can you talk a little bit about the bike trail? I'm not even sure what that means, but
Well, there's the Heartland Trail, and then there's also a number of internal trails
Okay.
that the city is constructing on our, just for our own internal use. And we've got a kind of a master plan. Every time we do a street project, if there's a trail that's been proposed to be on that segment, we try to include the trail. For example, MnDOT just completed a bunch of work out on Highway 34 with some lane changes and some different things, and so we included a segment of trail from the Riverside Edition into Curry Avenue.
okay.
So eventually, all these internal trails will be hopefully linked together someday, so people have lots of different routes and ways to go around and bike and do a healthier.
And is that Heartland Trail going clear across the state? Is that
Well, the Heartland Trail currently comes from Walker over to
Okay.
Park Rapids, and what we're working on right now, and we've got another request into the legislature for some bonding money, is the segment between Detroit Lakes and Frazee. And there's also the underpass under Highway 10 that MnDOT put in a couple of years ago, and that'll be part where the trail comes from the north side of the highway to the south side. And then it'll connect on to the trail we've already constructed from out by County 54 and Highway 10, and that comes in along North Shore Drive. So we're working on the trails. It can really help our tourism. It promotes healthy lifestyle, and so we're getting there.
Very good. Superintendent Froke, one more question for you. We talked about student ratios right now. What is the current student to teacher ratio?
For all intent and purposes, as you look at each age level, it changes. There isn't one. We lay a number out there and say this is a number for every class. What we try and do is get those the lower student to teacher ratio in the lower grades, because of the importance of reading. So we eyeball at kindergarten. We eyeball trying to be in that 20 to 22 range, and that's kind of when we make decisions on class size. And then the same holds true, trying to be in that 22 to 24 kids from first grade to third grade. And again, the key barometer there is that at third grade, the child needs to be at a level, the third grade reading level, or they will struggle for the rest of their educational career. And that research supports that. So we try and get those numbers lower to intervene on kids as best we can and as often as we can in those first four grades. After grade 3, you start taking a look at grades 4, 5, and 6. when you start getting up into the 25, 26, and as much as right now we're sitting at 28 in some of those classes, and they will go up.
Okay. Okay. Well, hey, it is 8:31, and we have told you that we would be here for an hour and a half, so we're going to call it. I'd like to give these gentlemen a hand and thank them for coming out and participating. And I've asked Tim if he will close us off with Amazing Grace. There's food out in the entryway here, some cookies and some snacks. So Tim's going to sing us on out. We're a church, so we can do that. So he's going to sing Amazing Grace for us here. And
Doug, do you have the bass part?
I want to say in closing, thank you again so much for coming out and participating. I want to let you know that we are looking at doing this on a quarterly basis. Our next event will be on November 16th. We're going to do kind of the same format. We're bringing in the the Humane Society of the Lakes, the Marshmallow Foundation, and Dennis Lang from ROX Vet Services to come and talk to us about our pets and our community. And some people that may really light your fire, and other people maybe not so much. Well, that's okay. Hang on. We're going to keep doing this. And the goal is just, again, how do we connect with our community? So.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come. 'Twas grace hath brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. The Lord has promised good to me. His word my hope secures. His will my shield and portion be, as long as life endures. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise as when we first begun. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. I was blind, but now I see. Thank you.
Thank you again, folks. Please have some snacks out there and hang around. And thank you again, gentlemen. We appreciate it so much.